Chapter 10. Ethan. The torchlight shook and bounced off the rough stonework as if the photons of light were themselves panicking. Ethan was last behind the two others. His heart was thumping twice the speed it would normally, and his rib cage was fighting hard to keep it back in its place. What is going on? What have they done to Dad? Why would they want to harm him or us? But soon, after jumping downstairs and round corners, Ethan's mind was free of thoughts, and his brain was spending all its energy on running, turning corners and jumping. Together, they passed through the rooms that they had already been in. However, it didn't take long for disaster to strike. While sprinting across one of the ancient chambers, Ethan dropped his torch. It spun across the floor before dimly coming to a rest. He took a few steps to pick it up. When it was in his hands again, the blasted thing faded. It had run out of batteries. The light was extinguished like, he felt, their chances of escaping unscathed from this maze of tunnels and stairways. Leo and Verity had not stopped. They hadn't even noticed he was not behind them. "Hey, you two!" He could hear their steps some way off. Down. Down. "Guys!" There was no answer. To his dismay, he could hear some faint sounds from behind him. Ernesto must have entered the pyramid now. He would be upon him soon, sooner than he cared for. Ethan had spare batteries in his bag. Without a working torch, he had no hope, no chance of escape. It would be like a blind person looking in a dark room for a black cat that wasn't there. Kneeling down, he unslung his rucksack and felt for the side pocket. Quickly locating the batteries, he placed them on the floor in front of him. With trembling hands, made worse by the ever-nearing footsteps, Ethan unscrewed the torch. "I have to put the batteries in the right way." As he slowly tipped the torch up to let the batteries slip out, he felt them. There was the knobbly bit at the end of the first battery. "I've got to put the negative end with a flat face in first, with the positive end sticking up." This was now an urgent race against time. Time had stood still in this place for over 1,000 years. Things inside had happened slowly. Dust had settled. Spiders had spun the odd web. The years had passed. Now, there was panic in the air, with hearts pulsing, feet thudding, and minds racing. Ethan managed to get the first battery in the right way, but he fumbled the second, and it bumped out of his trembling fingers to fall into the dust. "Come on, you can't be serious." Ethan felt blindly about on the dusty ground, shuffling gritty sand this way and that until his fingers found the battery. Relief coursing through his veins, he grasped the battery and felt for the end. He rammed it home. The end of the torch seemed to take an age to screw back on, but when the circuit in the torch was finally fully connected, the light that shone forth, as puny as it really was, felt like the burning hope of 1,000 suns. He pounced to his feet just as the heavy, clumping booted steps of Ernesto burst into the room. The man stopped. Heavy breaths came from behind his own shining light. "You, boy, stay just there." But as he, or indeed the shining torchlight that was Ernesto, started towards him, Ethan turned on his heels and sprinted out of the door right next to him. He was alone with a madman and no one to help him, and he had a sinking feeling he knew exactly where he was. Taking the steps two at a time, he had a feeling history was repeating itself. Ethan bounced down the stony steps, echoes of booted feet behind him. Down at the bottom of the stairway, he rounded a corner, and his fears were realized. Yes, he was right. There, in front of him, lay the gaping hole from which he had earlier rescued his sister. He had no time to think or worry. He had no choice. It was do or die. With a sharp intake of breath, a step back for a run-up, and a mighty launch forward, Ethan threw himself straight into fifth gear. By the time he reached the edge of the hole, he was in overdrive. He only had the pitiful light of the small torch to go by, but he still managed to get his timing right. In one superhuman feat of athleticism, he sprung from one side of the hole and vaulted through the air to land on the other. With his efforts, Ethan surely would have won the gold medal for long jump at his school sports day. His landing was less than graceful, and he felt his knees slam against the cold, hard rock beneath him. He glanced quickly back to see Ernesto round the corner. The man ran to follow Ethan, but skidded to an ungainly and abrupt stop. Whoa! The hole had been unexpected, and he must only have seen it at the last second. Ethan used this pause to his advantage and shot off down the corridor, limping only slightly. It didn't take long, he heard, for Ernesto to clear the hole with his longer legs. He heard the big man's heavy landing and grunts. Where to now? Just onwards. To anywhere. Ethan rounded another corner to be met with another corridor, with alcoves, or were they doorways, set off on either side. He ran on. Halfway down the low-ceilinged passageway, he turned back to see his predator. This was a bad decision. His feet catching quite a sizable rock in front of him, Ethan went flying, the torch spinning out of his hand to smack against the wall and die instantly. There was no light except the oncoming brightness of Ernesto, the blinding glare promising who knew what. The light grew brighter as it lumbered at even greater speed towards Ethan, joined with grunts of exertion or excitement or perhaps fury. This was it. He was done for.